Work on the backyard has begun. There's a bunch of things to do to turn this dirt lot into a fun and inviting space. One of the things I quickly realized that we needed was a walkway to connect the barn door and the side door. So that's what I'm going to build today. There's a ton of bricks stacked up on the other side of the yard, about 1,100. These were all pulled up and salvaged from different areas of the backyard. Instead of spending a bunch of money on new materials, I figured the most economic thing to do is reuse these old bricks for the pathway. I think the weathered bricks will look good and help give the yard some character. There's already a bunch of brick in the backyard, so it'll work to tie in the new building to the existing space. Okay, first things first. I wanted to add a hose bib to the side of the workshop. I knew exactly where a capped water line was from the building construction, so I just uncapped it, extended it to the building, and brought it up next to the outlet. It'll be nice to have another water option right outside the workshop. Once I was sure there were no leaks, I backfilled the trench and compacted it down. I secured the PVC to the siding with a pipe bracket, making sure it was perfectly vertical. The sidewalk leading to the workshop side door is 4 feet wide. It makes the most sense to just continue that 4-foot wide pathway along the building. I used stakes and string to mark out the edge of the pathway. The 4-foot width continued around the corner. Next, I used a shovel to scrape away any of the loose dirt. This ground is already really compact from the building construction, so just using the existing solid ground should work well with very minimal settling. Even still, I used a tamper on a few different spots. Now that the base was good, I started setting the elevations. I worked on the assumption that the edging on the building is level. I used a chalk line to mark the height of the walkway against the building. The concrete at either end of the walkway dictated some of the elevations, but I just made sure to have a slight slope going away from the building, and adjusted the string level accordingly. The bricks will sit on a bed of sand, but it's super important to get it perfectly smooth and at the right level. I worked in 10-foot sections because I had 10-foot long metal pipes. I added some sand at either end, got the pipe to the level where a brick sitting on top of it will be at the right height. I did this for the 4 spots at either end of the pipes. Then I added sand and used a third shorter pipe to screed the sand to the desired level. The sand extends out wider than the 4-foot pathway. This will help keep the sand under the bricks in place. Now, once it has the nice screed, it's important not to walk on it or disturb the sand, or else it'll be bumpy when the bricks go on it. Well, redo. That's alright. I hadn't gotten very far, so I just started over. But now the dogs were banished until this was done. I continued on with leveling the sand. When I got to the end of the 10-foot section, I carefully picked up the pipes and continued the process with the next section. When I got to the corner, I realized there was one thing I didn't consider with the levels, and that's the barn door. In order to fully open the one door, it'll extend over the brick pathway, so there needs to be clearance for it. Closer to the corner, it would have started scraping on the bricks, so I had to bring it down. That meant I'd have to adjust the outside edge elevation to still have a slope away from the building. It took quite a bit of finesse work, but I finally got it adjusted and finished placing all the sand. Moving right along, it's now time to start placing some bricks. Again, these are all salvaged bricks pulled up from other areas of the backyard. I started piling them in the wheelbarrow and carted them over. I'm glad I finally figured out a good use for these things because they were taking up a lot of space. I kept a bucket of sand and trowel handy. Before I placed any bricks, I filled the channels left behind by the pipes. I followed a very simple pattern. Along the outside edge is a full brick. Then it's a running bone pattern to fill the rest of the row up to the wall. Each row alternates, so the second brick is either a full or a half. I marked the most inside brick and cut it to be as close to the wall as I could. It was cool to see a pathway appear more and more with the completion of each row. I had a chop saw station set up nearby with a special blade that just ripped through the bricks like butter. Well, not quite like butter, but you definitely cannot cut these with a normal blade. I kept a rubber mallet handy as well to make any adjustments. Sometimes you need to hammer the bricks down into the sand a bit, or sometimes the rows are getting a little skewed. All the prep work and making the sand perfectly level made this process very easy. With the exception of a few cuts, most of the work was just moving bricks from one side of the yard to here and dropping them in place. When I got to the end, the bricks didn't perfectly line up with the short string, so instead of making the pathway under 4 feet, I chose to extend it another row of bricks and make it just over 4 feet. The bricks running long ways against the building had to be cut skinnier to keep the pattern going. This corner was a bit tricky to get right. Bricks are oblong-shaped, so 2 square bricks don't make a rectangle brick. I 45'd the ends of 2 bricks to fit together, but in order to fill the square that was left, I had to 45 2 more bricks and cut them in a certain way to get more area out of them and fill all the space. Once I figured that out, I finished the edge pattern and all the bricks were laid. Next step was to add a plastic edging to keep the bricks from floating away. This edging came in short sections that easily connect together to make a long run. It uses 8-inch plastic nails that drive into the ground. Since some of this ground is rock solid, some of the nails were hard to drive in all the way. In a few spots that were really difficult, I used large metal nails instead. The bricks just sitting there have a tendency to shift around a bit when being walked on. In order to lock them in place, I used a special water-activated polymer sand. I spread the sand around on the walkway, used a broom to push it around and fill all the cracks. Not only will this keep the bricks in place, but it's also supposed to act as a weed blocker and keep weeds from growing through. When I felt that all the crevices were filled, I removed all the excess sand from the bricks. Last but not least, I activated the polymer sand by spraying it with water from the newly added hose bib. I stayed off the pathway for 24 hours while it set, and then the pathway was done. This was my first time working with bricks, and while this isn't perfect, I'd say it's pretty darn good. There's a few bumps in the walkway, but it has the slope going north in the building, which is important. It looks good now, but it'll look even better with grass surrounding it. That's coming soon. I'm excited to have a non-dirt shortcut around the outside of the building. One that really gives it some cool character. Yeah, I like it. Okay, that's it for now. See ya.